Good afternoon, everyone. So glad you're joining us. Eric Alarid here with Tilson Homes, Senior Vice President, part of Tilson's fourth generation of our great little family-owned company. So glad you guys are joining us today on our Facebook Live, another installment. Today, we're going to be talking about everything that has to do with the construction process and all of our practices. So the materials that are used, the order that things happen, what's happening when nothing's happening, when it seems, how the inspections are working. So everything you guys need to know about the construction process, the stuff leading up to it, and then construction itself. We're going to talk about all that today. We want you to ask your questions. Joining us, as always, is our Director of Marketing, Dawn Dantzler. Say hello, Dawn.
Hi, everybody.
So Dawn will be behind the scenes, as always, filling in for helping us with the live chat. So if you have questions, shout them out on the chat. We will answer them. I'll be here as long as we need to be to get all your questions answered. And then, of course, we'll be posting this later so that you can go back and rewatch it if you have any questions. So Eric Alarid, Tilson Homes, glad you're joining us. Hope everybody out there is getting some semblance of normalcy going back, maybe some kind of rhythm, end of school, those kinds of things. So ask your questions in the chat. We will answer them as we go, and we are going to get started on everything construction process related. So a couple of brief usuals that we do. Of course, we are an 88-year-old family-owned and operated company. Why should you even listen to us? Well, we have been doing build on your lot since 1932. It's all we do. We've built well over 40,000 homes across the state of Texas. We only build in Texas. And on average, about a family a day moves into their brand new Tilson home. That's been the case for the better part of a century. So we don't know a lot about a lot of things, but we know a whole lot about building a home on your land, particularly if it's in the rural part of Texas. The main things we are going to cover today are going to be your plot plans and floor plans, of course, how a builder might read those in the field, your foundation plans, soil reports, how those play in. How the permits work, whether it's building permit or septic permit or floodplain permit, all those kinds of things. How the code is reviewed for compliance, because we do build there are codes that actually govern the state of Texas. They're not policed real well, but we're going to talk about how we build to them and how that's accomplished. Different community requirements, maybe a property owners association or architectural control committee, how the scheduling works, what things can happen simultaneously, what things kind of happen serially. And then we'll dip lightly into windstorm requirements. If you have questions about that, let us know. So we hope to get everything covered in this in the hour that we're going to be on here. But ask your questions, and I will be glad to answer them if I am able. So starting with utilities. So interestingly, in build on your lot, in almost all cases, there's nothing ever been on the property before. No house, no structure, no nothing. So in a lot of cases, there's never been power, there's never been water, there's no type of way to get rid of the wastewater, so there's no septic or sewer system. So all that kind of has to be figured out. And in most cases, starting with power, that you're going to be on a co-op or a cooperative. In other words, the big energy companies, your TXUs, your NRGs, those kind of are not necessarily out in the country. Those are typically going to be like your Sam Houston Electric Co-op or Pedernales Electric Co-op or Guadalupe Valley Electric Co-op or any number of different cooperatives that are across the state of Texas. And in many of those cases, you're going to have to meet a representative out at the property of the power company to kind of help locate where power is coming from, how it's going to come onto your property. Is it going to be overhead? Is it going to be underground? Are they going to need an easement? And that's typically something we talk about pretty early on, because a lot of people will ask us, well, how come y'all just don't take care of everything? And to the degree that we can, we do. We'd love to stay in control of the majority of the process. However, with things like power, for instance, in many cases, that co-op is going to need you, the landowner, to deed them an easement. So 15 or 20 or 30 foot wide surface easement for them to run their poles onto your property or to trench and run power onto your property. And they want that easement so they can come in and maintain it, so they can mow it, so they can make sure that trees don't grow up and fall down on the power lines and cause forest fires. So there's some things, and obviously we can't deed them that easement because we don't own the land. So the customer, on the build on your lot side, the customer is integral part of making sure that happens. And we need all the help we can get from you. So we've got temporary power at first, and then of course permanent power usually once the masonry is on the house, we can start getting permanent power. Then what are we going to do about water? Do you have is there a community water or some kind of public water entity, or are you going to need a private water well? And that'll depend on, of course, where your property is located. And again, if you have questions about these items specifically, just shout them out to us, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that we can. If you're doing a water well, is it going to be your own well, or is there, a family member or somebody close by you'll be sharing a well with them? We have to figure all of those things out and how that works out with the mortgage if you're doing that, and how that water is going to be shared, and if a new one needs to be drilled, how close it can be to other water wells that are in the area, and how close it can be to septic systems in the area, not just yours, but actually neighbors. So all of the state has rules and regulations about all those things. Then after we've got power and water figured out, we got to figure out what to do with the wastewater. So again, these are all things that we help you. We hold your hand every step of the way and help walk you through these processes, answer these questions for you, help you go to the various entities, do it. If we can do it, we do it for you. If we're allowed to in specific areas. It just varies from county to county and from community to community. So in very few of our instances, probably less than 10%, our customers are going to have some type of public sewer, city sewer system. But the vast majority of the homes that we build are on a on-site sewage facility, which is a septic system. So it can be conventional, it can be aerobic. On the aerobic side, it can be a surface application, it could be a drip irrigation system. There's a lot of different types of septic systems. And the state does have some guidelines that have to be met to whether it's going to be conventional or aerobic, and then once it's aerobic, whether it's going to be surface application or drip irrigation system. So again, we help walk you through that, navigate that, suggest registered sanitarians or engineers to design that, and then we go from there. And again, 90% of our homes are on septic, so we have a significant amount of experience with what to do with septic systems. So, and in some cases, if you had an existing house there, either it was an old house that you demolished, an old farmhouse, or perhaps a mobile home that was there, we can a lot of times work with that as well. And then once you got water and power and wastewater or sewer figured out, then if you do choose to have some type of gas, which some do, some don't, some of our folks are totally electric, which is fine. And some of our folks want some gas appliances. And if there's natural gas in the area available, a natural gas supplier, then of course we can tap into that, and they'll set a meter and go from there. If not, really your only option is going to be propane or LP, liquefied petroleum gas. And that tank can be buried, as you see here in this picture, or that tank can be above ground. In a lot of cases, that's going to depend on a community. So for instance, the community, the restrictions or the covenants may say, if you have a propane tank, it must be out of sight from the street, or if they say it must be buried. There are some we've seen that they must be buried. It's no big deal. The regulator is up on top above the surface. That's how it's filled. There's a gauge up there, just like a fuel gauge on your car. It tells you how much gas you have. So that is pretty well covers the utilities. So Dawn, do we have any questions about any of the utilities that folks have? And
we do. Renee is asking at what time you need to get the electrical installed. Is that before the foundation or before framing?
All right, Renee. So our recommendation is always as early as possible. So a lot of these co-ops, they're because they're not big giant power companies, they don't have the manpower, the equipment to just do something every single day. So a lot of them have wait lists. We've seen 2, 4 to 6, even some rare cases, 8-week wait lists on getting work done to get power. So getting the poles actually placed on, down a road, then down your property, and get the transformer installed. Because there's a significant amount of actual work, man hours and equipment that has to take place. So certainly want to start that process as soon as possible. We can typically get the foundation down if power is not there, which it's not preferred, but we can get that done. We can cut those form boards on generator power, but certainly to do framing, to run the compressors and run the saws and those things like that, a generator is very, very expensive to run at that point. We really prefer to have power installed, temporary power for us to work off of. So we provide the temporary pole, the temporary power pole. You don't have to worry about getting that. All you got to worry about doing is getting power from from wherever it's coming from, the transformer to the actual site, to our temporary power pole. So great question, Renee. Thanks for asking.
Okay, great. That's all that we have at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm going to move on to the next one and go from there. Let's see. So as soon as possible, as soon as we can, after you enter an agreement with Tilson, one of the very first things that happens is we come to your property and stake the home out. So what is the stakeout? It's not the police sitting in a squad car watching things happening at night. It is where we actually come out there with stakes, with wooden stakes, or in some cases rebar for you hill country folk, where your ground will break our stakes. We come out with rebar and help you locate on your property where the house is going to sit. There's typically a whole lot of options, and we can help you with maybe the topography, with maybe placement of what you want to be looking at. So we place the house on there and we kind of walk you around it. Hey, here's where your front door is going to face. Here's where your rear covered porch is going to face, and kind of get your feedback. Oh no, I was kind of planning on looking this way. So we'll get the house and we'll turn it and get it exactly how you want it. And then also give you feedback on things like, hey, what we're seeing, the power is going to be coming from over here. It looks like the septic's probably going to be best this way. I see your water well's already here, and kind of help you measure those various things to make sure that everything is going to fit properly, not just for the build itself, but really for the long-term use of your land. So, it's an old kind of a real estate colloquial phrase of what is the highest and best use of the property. Well, we're doing the exact same thing on your lot, even if it's out in the country somewhere. We want to be sure that's that your land is utilized as best as possible. Because once that house is placed there on slab, it's fairly permanent. But we go out there, we let you know if any other additional site clearing has to be done. We'll shoot grades and check what the out of level or the slope of the property is. Now we have dollar amounts built into every one of our homes for every county we build in. That's up to a certain amount of drop and a certain amount of site prep. That's all included. And then we let you know at this time if there's going to be any additional access needs, culverts, construction drives, all that different kinds of things, and then what the actual added level is going to be. We also take into consideration your setbacks and easements. So this is a really, really, really important part of the process, and it's an exciting meeting. It's kind of the first time that a Tilson representative comes out there, and it's a very real experience for our customers. We get a lot of really positive feedback and neat things. We go out there and kind of set that sign, and it's really happening. So you'll walk away from this meeting with kind of a checklist of things that need to be done. We're going to do everything that we can, but again, there's certain things, because you are the owner of the property, that you have to do, that we just legally can't do for you. So moving on from the stakeout, this is one of the things that's determined then. In a lot of cases, customers already have some type of access there, but in many cases they don't. So what we are going to need is all-weather access. So what does all-weather access mean? Well, we got pickup trucks, light pickup trucks or cars, SUVs that we all drive every day, and that's one thing. And then what we also have is 30 and 40,000 pound dump trucks and 70 and 80,000 pound concrete trucks. Those are what's going to be helping build the home, right? So lumber trucks, concrete trucks, dump trucks. So, while a light duty pickup or SUV, even you folks like me, with an F-250 or F-350, that is not a heavy piece of equipment. That is still a light duty pickup truck. Just because it can drive around onto the property does not necessarily mean that a dump truck or loaded concrete truck can get on and off of there. So we can help you with that. Typically, the county is going to determine the culvert size. So a culvert is a pipe in the ditch through which water can flow. So there's usually a ditch you got to cross in a lot of cases, and the county is responsible for flood control, for making sure that water can still move, but you're still going to be able to cross it. So you put a pipe in the ground, and they're going to determine the diameter of that pipe. Is it 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches? Is it two 24-inch pipes? What has to go there? And then in a lot of cases, the county will actually set that pipe. Not all cases, but in a lot of cases they will. And the reason they will is because they want to make sure that it's sloped the correct way. We've talked about that on some of the other videos that we've done. You want to be sure that culvert slopes downhill, because if it doesn't, you've just created a dam, a way that water is just going to stand up against and eventually erode your driveway. You don't want to do that. So again, we can help guidance with this, but this is going to be something, it doesn't have to happen before we can start a contract or anything like that. But and you may not even know exactly where you want this to be until we come out and help you place the house. That's perfectly fine. We certainly don't want to have you put the driveway in and then only decide you need to move it based on where you want the house to be now. So if you don't have it already, it's okay. We can help you with where that should be located long-term, basically on get onto the driveway and then pulling into the garage. So, but all-weather access is something that's going to be necessary, and it doesn't necessarily mean you can just get on there with any vehicle. Site clearing. So typically after the stakeout appointment, there's, we find out which trees can stay, which trees have to go, how they're going to be removed. We do need trees, stumps, and all out of the footprint of the home. So we have a lot of customers that maybe want to clear the site themselves, and that's okay. Some folks do that. But cutting the tree off at the ground or at the stump is not enough. You got to get those stumps out, because those stumps and those roots over time, they will decay. It rots. And so you don't want a cavity underneath your foundation at any point in time. Outside the footprint of the home, you can do whatever you want to do with them. But inside the footprint of the home, they got to come out, trees, roots, and all. So we'll take a pause right here. And Dawn, do we have any other questions that we can help answer?
We do have a few questions.
Okay.
Liz is asking if we can provide an estimate of how much money she should put aside to do the utilities, septic, and all of those things that we talked about at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, great question. So it's going to vary from county to county. So some utility companies, for instance, they'll actually do the work, and for as little as zero money, getting utilities there. And some of them do charge. They may charge, $3,500, $4,000, $5,000 to get power there. But that's going to be a very specific question to the co-op or the public utility company that you're dealing with. So it could be as little as zero, could be as much as low five figures. And we can help you with who to contact in those cases as well. And then on the septic and things like that. So again, that's going to vary quite a bit, but you're talking somewhere between $9,000 and $12,000 for everything septic. It may be a little higher out in the hill country in Central Texas, where they're getting into rock. That may be more of the $13,000 to $15,000 range, $12,000 to $15,000 range. Whereas you get closer towards the coast and even Northeast Texas, sometimes it's as little as $7,000, $8,000. So it really depends on where you're building in Texas. But we do have pricing at our design centers for the various counties that are around where those design centers are, so they can get you the exact prices there. And then water, same thing. Usually there's a water, if there's a public water entity of some sort, community water or public water, they'll have a tap fee of some sort, usually anywhere from $700 to maybe $1,200, $1,250 for the water tap. And then if you do a water well, that's typically, of course, going to be obviously more. You're looking somewhere between, and that can really vary. I mean, Gulf Coast and East Texas, $7,000 to $10,000, depending on how deep you have to go. Out in the hill country, it can be $20,000 to $30,000, depending on how deep you have to go as well. So, but the beauty of that is it's a one-time deal. Once you do and drill that well, it's your water. You'll never have a water bill. It's yours forever and ever. And now those things, in many cases, can be added to the loan. So as long as you've got that 10% equity requirement met, those items can be rolled into your home mortgage. So you don't necessarily have to come out of pocket for those things. But great question, Liz. Thanks for asking.
Okay. And Jennifer is asking, she's not really sure exactly where on her property she'd like to place her house. So she's wondering if she can coordinate with the co-op for electricity after the stakeout.
Absolutely, Jennifer. Yeah, that's a great question. And that's usually one of those, you say you leave with a little to-do list. Typically one of those things on that to-do list will be contact power company, meet representative at site. So and we can meet them there with you, or when we leave, there'll be, of course, orange flag stakes in the ground. We label them, electrical stub here, water stub here. So that's all there and labeled. And you can just meet a representative from the co-op out there and say, okay, well, they're thinking the electrical's going to be right here. And even if the power company comes out and says, well, that ain't happening, it's going over here, that's okay. That's no problem. Just call us. We'll come back out there free of charge. We'll move our stuff around. It's no big deal. But yeah, that's a great question. And it's no problem. You can coordinate after the stakeout appointment. Good question.
Great. Toby and Rita are asking if we can provide a list of the appropriate people to contact to get these services.
We can, Toby and Rita. We need to know exactly where you're building, and then our one of our design center consultants can reach out to you and give you folks of who to contact. And again, in some cases, it can be done by Tilson, and it is done by Tilson. So we've got plenty of places where we take care of the septic system, we take care of all the utilities, we take care of the drive, we do it all, but not in every single county in Texas. We can't do that, but we do have it in many of them. Great question. Okay. Yeah, get us your information. We'll do it.
All right, one last question. Jessica is asking how far we can build from the street and/or water electric line and what's included in the price.
All right, Jessica. So we have built, so I sold a home when I was selling homes at our location in Spring, Texas. We built a house in the middle of 26,000 acres in Shepherd, Texas. So miles, it can be miles from the street, or it can be, 25 feet off the road. Which is, on average, we're probably 50 to 125 feet off of the roads where we're building on an acre or two. And so what's typically included in our price is going to be 50 feet of electrical and water line that's included. And then we have a price per lineal foot to go beyond that. Some communities in which we build, we include more. We already have, like, for instance, in Texas Grand Ranch, we include more than that. Places that we build frequently, or have a model home, like we know the setback is 75 feet. We know we're going to be somewhere between 75 and 100 feet back. So we just include 100 feet automatically. But in the base price of every one of our homes, we got 50 feet of water line, electrical line already included. But you can be as far off the road as you either are allowed to be by setbacks and easements, because many places do have a back building line, or if you're in the middle of 26,000 acres, wherever you want to be. Great question, Jessica. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, we will move on past our site clearing. So we've had the stakeout appointment. We've determined what utilities we're going to have. We've reached out to those utility companies and started that process. We've determined which trees have to go, which trees get to stay. Ideally, as many as possible get to stay. That's why you bought the place to begin with, or chose that particular site. So, and then we've got all that stuff done. And now, while this is happening, this is one of those things that can be happening simultaneously. The property doesn't necessarily have to be completely 100% aced and cleared, if you will, in order for us to start doing some of the groundwork or site evaluation. But we can do any necessary dirt work at that time once the trees are cleared. But, like, for instance, the construction drive can be going in while they're doing the clearing. In fact, we've had many cases where our same contractor who's doing the clearing is putting in the construction drive. So a lot of those things can happen simultaneously. And then, of course, we take grade shots of not just the footprint of the home itself, but actually the bulk of the property. And we're going to shoot it. And when I say shoot it, we're using laser transit. We're looking at level, and we're going to shoot it in relation to the road. We're going to shoot it in relation to your neighbor's house, if it's close enough, to just make sure that we're establishing positive drainage away from the new home we're building all the way around, and that we got someplace for that water to go. It's a really important thing for the performance of your foundation long term. So, speaking of the foundation, we a lot of behind the scenes work goes into designing a foundation for Tilson Homes. So, yes, there's a geotechnical investigation. We'll get to that here in a second, but I want to talk about just the importance of the thought process that goes into these. Of course, we've built in, over 140 counties across the state. We use an engineering firm that has a combined experience of 150 years. They've got over 300,000 foundations on the ground in Texas. They're keenly familiar with every type of soil that's in the areas where we build. And for that reason, we rely on them quite heavily, not just for the geotechnical investigation, but there's some other data that they look back on historically that really helps us out. But the foundation's got to carry your load, not just at the snapshot in time where we're doing the geotechnical investigation, but with all different types of moisture contents, because there's going to be some periods of time where it's really, really rainy, and there'll be other periods of time where there's a drought. And that's been that way, by the way, since time began. That's not new. But we want to make sure that the foundation performs in those conditions. So, soil is a highly volatile animal. It can expand, it can contract, it can move a house, it can lift, a house, it can drop a house. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. We want to be sure that we're designing your foundation to perform specifically for your soil. It's a really, really big deal. We don't use the neighbors. We don't use the last one we built in this county, 2 or 3 years ago, because soil can vary not just, from county to county, but even on the same piece of property 150 feet away. So in most cases, we're going to do a soil sample, like a site bore. So we're going to go down 15 to 20 feet, typically in 2 spots inside the footprint of the home. Just so we're not going to do, a lot of builders will just go to the street and do a soil sample from the street right there in the ditch. It's better than nothing, I guess, but we want to know what's happening where this house is going to be sitting. So that's the way we do it. There are 1,300 different types of soil recognized in Texas. So we probably haven't built on every single one of them because we don't go west of Light Junction, but we've built on a bunch of them. So for that reason, we want to know how it's going to perform when it's dry, when it's wet, and what does vegetation do to it? How many gallons per day does a 30-inch oak tree use out of the soil? Because that's a factor. And fortunately, the engineering firm that we use takes all that in consideration. We have the experience to think about all those things and go. But here's some of the things that the engineer considers that a lot of people aren't aware of. This is kind of one of those things like, why is nothing happening? Well, stuff is happening behind the scenes. So we've got an engineering firm. They do the site visit and they drill, of course. In the cases where we're not doing a site bore, an actual soil sample, we go out and at least do what we call a geotechnical investigation. Sometimes it's a test pit, so like a skid steer or maybe a backhoe. And if it's, they'll go and do a dig. And if it's rock, if it's solid rock, maybe 4 or 5 inches of topsoil and then just rock, we're not going to go do a 20-foot bore of rock. It's rock. We're good. But in all the other cases, we are going to go ahead and drill. They actually pull up USGS, United States Geological Survey, fault line reviews. They look at those. It's not a major thing in our part of the world, but it's a thing. Geologic map review, and then aerial photos. They actually go back and look at old surveillance aerial photos from 20, 30, 50 years ago. And you might be surprised at some of the things that were out there, but they can see if there was an old tank out there, or if there was a fence line out there that cattle used to walk up and down, because their hoofs and them walking up and down, it's going to be compacted differently than the ground on either side of it. So weird things that we've encountered in the last, almost 90 years that we think about and we ask them to go check on. It's stuff that a lot of builders just, if you haven't ever encountered it, you're not going to think about it. So we go back and look at all that data, and then using all of that combined, not just the soil sample, but all of that data combined, design a foundation specifically for your home. There's liquid limit and plastic limit. This is pretty detailed stuff. If you want to really nerd out, we'll be glad to talk to you about it. But the liquid limit is basically, at what point does the dirt become mud, become silt that runs away? And then the plastic limit is, if you were ever a kid in the country, or even at, your mom and papa's house, if you got dirt and you started rolling the dirt and tried to make a worm out of the dirt, okay, well, guess what? The engineer, we pay them to do that. If you can believe that. So tell your kids to go be an engineer, they get to play in the dirt. but they'll roll that dirt out, that mud out, until it will no longer stay together up to an eighth inch. And that actually tells them what the plastic limit of that soil is. At what point does it start to break apart? Then there's also the potential vertical rise, which is exactly what it says it is. How much, if exposed to excess moisture, how much could this type of soil potentially rise? Because you can lift the house with excess water if the drainage isn't done properly. So those are all things that our engineer and we consider before we design a foundation, or when we're designing a foundation. So now, how do I know if it's being done right? So we went to all this work to collect all this data. Now, how do we make sure that that we actually are doing in the field what they drew on the piece of paper? Particularly in an unincorporated area of Texas where there are no county building inspectors. So Tilson is going to be sure, the engineering firm that we use is going to send an engineer out there to the site prior to slab placement. So you can see here, he's standing up there and he's actually taking, because they tell us how deep the beams have to be, how wide the beams have to be, how far apart the cables can be spaced. All that information is on there. And he goes and double checks it, usually the day before the pour, maybe the morning, not usually the morning of, but the day before the pour, they'll go out there. And that way, any alterations that need to be made, they can be made the morning of the pour. We've done that. So just because they find something isn't going to mean they're going to cancel the whole pour the next day. But they will if they find something serious enough. We absolutely will. But in most cases, it's little things here and there. Maybe make this one a little wider, this one a little deeper. And they'll do that as they're getting ready to place in the next morning. And then the cables of the foundation, we use, in most cases, a post-tension foundation, which simply means we're going to come out after the fact and tension, a couple of days following the slab placement, depending on the season and the weather, will determine how many days go by. And this actually, we've had customers that'll call after, maybe the day after or 2 days after the slab's placed and say, oh, I see certain cracks everywhere. The surface cracks everywhere. And we tell them, wait till they come out and put this thing under tension. Because sure enough, they put it under tension both directions, so front to back and left to right, somewhere around 29,000 psi. Every single one of those cables that you see is tensioned to just under 30,000 psi. And man, when it does that, it shores that concrete up and takes advantage of the tensile strength of the steel and the compression strength of the concrete. So that's done in the days following the slab placement. Again, and an engineer is on site to oversee that. So a lot of stuff goes into slab placement. So I'm going to pause here real quick, Don, see if there are any other questions talking about slabs before we get into the more construction of the home.
Yes, Renee has a question about what if their property is in a flood zone? What kind of happens then? Are they required to pay flood insurance? Do we need to raise up the foundation? What's going to happen?
Great question. So a couple of things. If the property is in a flood zone, typically if any portion of the property is in the flood zone, even if it's the back corner of the property that we're not even building on, your homeowner's insurance, and that's who ultimately we're talking. This is not a Tilson requirement, not even a county requirement necessarily. We'll talk about that in a second. Or even the mortgage company requirement, although they're going to play a role. It's always going to be up to your insurance. So whether it's Farmers or State Farm or Allstate or whoever it is that you're using, USAA, if a portion of your property is in a flood zone, they're going to require you to carry flood insurance. And we're going to need to get a benchmark in natural ground elevation. So we determine exactly where the floodplain is on your property. And then we're going to have to be a certain amount above that. So we can help with that. A surveyor sets that benchmark. We shoot our transit to that benchmark and we make sure we're above that. But yes, you are going to have to carry flood insurance, which, by the way, I believe that's wise. It's a wise thing to do. We went through Hurricane Harvey just over 2 years ago now, and I'll tell you, that's not something I want to do again. And particularly, we encountered a lot of folks who were either uninsured or underinsured, and that is not a road you want to go down. So the other thing is, yes, you can raise the foundation. In some cases, we're not going to have an option. So for instance, let's say I think it's Brazoria County right now. They require the house to be 24 inches or 2 feet above base flood elevation. So what that means is FEMA has determined somewhere an arbitrary line, I guess arbitrary is the wrong word, a line that they have determined. So this is the line above which you are out of the floodplain, below which you are in the floodplain. And so what the county is saying is, okay, at that line, we want the finished floor of your home where you're walking around, living your life day to day, to be 2 feet above that line. And so we go out, we find where that line is with a surveyor with a benchmark, and then we shoot and raise our forms to where they are 2 feet higher than that. And that's going to be whatever the county requires. And that requirement varies from place to place with different cities and different counties. But yes, you can raise the foundation. They're definitely not going to let you build one where the finished floor is below the floodplain. That's not going to happen. The finished floor is going to have to be raised up out of the floodplain, and then you're probably still going to have to carry flood insurance. Great question, Renee. Very specific.
Okay, and Corey has a specific question too. Are bell-bottom piers built into the base cost estimate of the home, or do we add the cost of the piers after the geotechnical investigation is complete?
Great question, Corey.
And then you're going to have to explain Corey's question to me.
Yeah, so bell-bottom piers. So there's different kinds of ways to if an engineer encounters soil that they feel like will not support the weight of the home. That's what we're talking about. So they went out there, they've done the geotechnical investigation. In most cases like this, it's going to be a soil test or soil sample, and they've determined, hey, this soil cannot support the weight of this home. We're recommending piers. Now, they're actually been getting away from piers of late. We used to do them. The engineers have going to wider beams, what's called a hatch beam in some cases, or a barrier beam. They're doing those instead. They're more cost effective, and they also do a better job because they distribute the weight of the home on a larger surface areas, which we're talking about. So short answer to your question is no, we don't build bell-bottom piers into the price of the home. There's very, very, very few homes that we build that require piers. And they've gotten away from the bell-bottom ones, and they're doing different types of piers. The other thing about piers is the house is never supposed to be really attached to those piers. So they're only supposed to be there if the weight of the soil can't support it, but the home is supposed to be able to move laterally. So the piers don't do you any good unless the soil can't support the weight of the home, which is actually a very, very rare situation in the areas of Texas where we build. It does happen. We're not immune to it, but it's very, very rare. And because it's very, very rare, we don't include it in the base price because very few of our customers actually need that to happen. So if the geotechnical investigation calls for it, they're typically going to give us a couple of options, Corey. They're going to say, hey, you can attack it with chemical injections, and that's this much. You can attack it with bell-bottom piers, and that's this much. You can attack it with hatch beams or barrier beams, and that's this much. And we'll take those options to the customer, because if it's something the engineer is confident in and we're confident in the way it's going to perform, we'll take it to the customer and say, you here's what we think, you choose, and tell us what you would like to see done. But yeah, great question. Thanks, Corey.
Okay, great. Jennifer just wanted to say thank you for doing these videos. She's finding them super helpful, considering using us for her next home. So hopefully this is helping her make that decision, see where the right choice.
Jennifer. Appreciate that very much. Thanks for joining us.
And then Joseph has a question, not about foundations, but still very important. Can we add that LaSalle alternative bathroom to the Breckenridge floor plan?
You bet. Yeah, Joseph, we can put that LaSalle. So I'm assuming you're talking about the one where it's a large shower. You walk through it when we have in our model home there. But yes, we've rearranged many of our floor plans to accommodate the LaSalle alternate bathroom. So absolutely, not a problem.
Okay. And then Toby and Rita, do you have a question? When we're talking about those extra costs that may come, how are those handled?
All right. So I'm assuming we're talking about like foundation compliance costs, something like that. So again, just like in our presentation here, we haven't started any real construction, right? So we will not proceed into construction until the customer and Tilson are completely transparent or aware of every single dollar that's going to go into this home. We do not go into construction and say, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you it's an extra X amount of $1,000 on your foundation. We're not going to do that to somebody. It's not the way we do business, and it's not the way we treat other human beings. So the way any extra costs are handled, whether it's something discovered on the land, which is the only ones that are unknown, or initiated by the customer, those are handled on a change order. That is the only legal way that we have in our contract that that the price of the home can be changed, and that change order has to be signed off by all parties. So it's not going to be hidden. It's not going to be a sneak attack over here. We can move the house over there and maybe save some money. But the extra costs are handled on a change order signed off by all parties before we start construction. hope that answers the question.
All right, very good. That is all the questions we have right now.
All right, thank you. Hey, guys, keep asking the questions. We'll answer as many as we can, as long as it takes. And so now we're about to start. We've got all this stuff done. I know this is a construction process seminar, but we are now about to start construction. So a lot of people do ask about, what does it take so long, or why do you tell us it's 10 to 12 months? All this discovery process and the beam depth and beam width and soil test and engineering and septic permitting and utilities, all that has to happen before we can start construction. You don't want to try to go into construction and figure those things out later. That is a bad idea, but a lot of custom builders do that. They get that construction loan closed and they start spending your money. And that's like trying to load a train as it's going down the tracks. It's not a good idea. Very unsafe and not going to turn out good. So now we're ready to go. We got our permits in place. We're ready to rock and roll. We're going to set forms, which is, I like using this picture here. 2 reasons. 1, this was my Tilson home. 2, it's, yes, the boards can what's called run wild. So these form boards are used more than once. You can tell this is not brand new lumber. It doesn't need to be. It's not holding your house up. It only needs to sit here long enough to hold concrete, and then they're going to break them down and take them to the next job. So they'll cut many of them to fit, but some of them that if they're too long, that's okay. They can just what's called run wild. So if you see this, it doesn't mean we don't know the dimensions of your home. It just means that we're going to use those foam boards later on somewhere else. So they do what's called a make-up or a make-ready. So we deliver fill material in there. We dig the beams to the depth prescribed by the engineer, width and depth. We get the plumbing all right. All your sewer line is running there, right? So every time you wash your hands or flush the toilet or take a shower, that water goes down and out through the sewer pipes out to your septic system. And then we get the 6 mil polyethylene vapor barrier in there. That's what the black plastic you're looking at there. That's to keep moisture from coming up from the ground and getting through into the concrete, because the concrete is porous. And then they're going to do the cable spacing, which is what you're seeing there is all the post-tension cables. And these are various transitions. So this is a porch, and this is another porch. And sometimes you'll see these in the middle. These are called grade stakes. So this is so they can ensure how level the concrete is as they're placing it, and what's called screeding it. So this is actually the casita there in Texas Grand Ranch. So the house is back here in the left corner. They finished placing the house slab, and now they're placing the slab here on the casita. This that you're looking at over here is a shower. So again, we're going to drop the shower floors so that we can get water down into the pan and then tile to that and go from there. Then we actually place the slab. So this one's using a pump truck, and you can see the guys in there working. We like to use the pump truck in most of those situations so that we can ensure that concrete gets all the way down to the bottom of the beams. And then they're, of course, raking it, pulling it, and getting it level with the top of those form boards so that it's as level as possible. Then they're finishing the slab. So there's lots of different ways to finish it, and usually every home is done with all these. So you got the big machines in the top left-hand corner you see, because this is the day of the pour, but human beings can actually get on there and walk around on it within about 2 or 3 hours of it being poured and start to put a nice finish on there. They'll use more of a hand trowel to finish around your plumbing penetrations and things like that. And then a pull trowel for the porches and garages and different things like that. So the next thing that happens is we deliver the material. So this is all your lumber is going to show up first. In a lot of cases, we'll stage it. Depends on how much space we have around the home. And also, we don't like stuff getting up and walking away. But if it does, it's covered under Tilson's Builder's Risk Insurance. A lot of builders require the homeowner to carry the builder's risk insurance, which is if stuff gets stolen or lost or damaged, you're on the hook for it. That's not the case with Tilson Homes. We pay for all the material, and if it grows legs and walks away, that's on us. So then we start framing. So we're going to frame the house, get that OSB wrap, get the OSB sheathing on there, get the Tyvek drain wrap on there. And at this point, where you're looking at the pictures here, this house is technically dried in. So a lot of customers wonder why we call it dried in when there's no hardy plank or stone or brick on it yet. But the reality is this is what's known as dried in. So at this point, the house should be pretty well waterproof. It could rain on it and not get inside. the brick and the hardy and the stone is a facade. It does help protect, but the Tyvek and the tape joints and the tape around the windows and the flashing dries the house in. So that with the Rhino liner that we put on the top, it's done. So the next thing that happens once we've got the house dried in is we do what's called the mechanical roughs. So your plumbing is roughed in. So we bring your sewer pipes up, your vent pipes, all of our hot and cold water for our sinks and commodes and showers and tubs and all that kind of good stuff. Then the HVAC, the heating and ventilation and air conditioning systems are roughed in. So the ductwork is ran. The upstairs unit, the attic unit, is placed. We don't place the condensing unit, outside unit yet, because we don't want it to get stolen or damaged. And of course, your electrical is roughed in. So we run all the wire through the walls where all your outlets and lights and switches are going to go, and put the service in the breaker box. And really at this point is typically when you can get permanent power hooked up. So that's what happens next. And then it's ready for insulation. So climate zone 2. So we build in 2 climate zones in Texas where Tilson is, climate zone 2 and climate zone 3. So climate zone 2 is further to the south and to the east. We're going to use an R15 bat in the walls, and then an R38 blown in the attic. So we put the bat insulation in your walls at this stage, your bat insulation, any sloped ceilings. And then we don't do the blown in insulation until after the sheetrock is there in the ceiling to hold that. But, and actually this is where one of those kind of downtimes occurs. People ask us, why is nothing happening? And that's because the house is currently sitting at this stage for inspections. So we got an energy inspection that has to happen. They inspect the insulation and any of our polycell that we've done. They inspect the taping of the Tyvek, all that different kind of stuff. And then also an actual building inspector is out there inspecting the frame and the electrical and the plumbing and the HVAC roughs. So that may take a little time for that to get coordinated. And then anything we have to remedy, of course, we want to get that done before we go in and sheetrock. So also the Tilson building superintendent goes in at this stage and does what's called a frame punch, which means they go through the whole house with a full set of plans and usually a 6 or 8 foot level. And they're picking out studs that they want repaired or replaced. They're, maybe a framer had a cabinet blocking in the wrong space, or maybe they missed an electrical outlet somewhere when the electricians were roughing in. So the builder goes through and checks all those things. And then he may have a list that he has to give to his framer, his electrician, and his plumber that they need to come out and fix, along with any code issues that the inspector finds. So it may sit for a little bit here, a week or two, where we're waiting on all those inspections to happen, and then we're remedying anything that we find, and then moving on down the road. So just because you don't see something happening doesn't necessarily mean that nothing's happening. It could be that we're waiting on inspections. It could be that we're waiting on a trade to come back out and remedy something that we've discovered that we want fixed. So that's how that works. If you are in climate zone 3, or you have opted for spray foam in climate zone 2, that's when we would do the spray foam insulation. Would be after those HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and frame inspections. So they come out, they spray the attic decking. So you can see here in the picture on the right, they're actually spraying the backside of the roof decking, which is why you don't see, it's no tech shield, because there's no point, because you're spraying over it. And then they spray the cavities of the walls. It's definitely a tighter home, a quieter home. And it's more energy efficient, not because it's a higher R value. It's more energy efficient because it's a tighter home. You lose less of that air that you're paying to heat and cool, because it's not escaping out the little bitty cracks and things like that. So do we have any questions at this point, Ms. Dantzler?
We do. Let me get those queued up for you.
Let's hear them.
So Lori is asking if we normally do a concrete foundation in Tyler County.
We do, Lori. We normally do a concrete foundation, a slab on grade in all the roaring metropolises of Tyler County, like Coleman Mill and Woodville and Village Mills and all those great places. So, yes, ma'am, we sure do.
Okay. And then Tyler had a follow-up question on, we were talking about, the extra costs that may come in when we analyze the foundation and find there's some extra work. Do they have to accept the extra cost? And what happens if they don't? Okay,
great question. So, Tyler, this is an area where you definitely don't want to skimp and save money, and that's on the foundation. So the only unknown that we have going in this whole deal, I mean, we've got pricing for everything in our e-price book, really, for like crown molding or cedar trim or this type of door or that type of door hardware, or this type of plumbing fixture or this type of floor covering. The only thing that's unknown is what's underneath your soil. The good news is that's not going to change. There's nothing, regardless of what builder you end up using, what's underneath your soil is not going to change. So the question is, do you have to accept the cost? Well, we aren't going to build it without complying with what the engineer recommends, if that makes sense. So it's either we do it the way the engineer recommends and build it like that, or we're not going to stand behind it. We're not going to build it. We can't waive a warranty or anything like that. That's actually not legal in the state of Texas. The builder and engineer must provide a structural warranty on the home. So when we get the feedback from the engineer, now we'll go back and forth with the engineer if it's something that you're like, oh no, that's we don't like that, or we don't think that's fair. We can go back to the engineer and say, hey, do you have any other alternatives that are maybe you think would still work, but maybe more cost effective? But we've been using them for a long time, and they're pretty good about doing it in the most cost effective way. They're not going to go crazy and make it an over engineer. Typically, I find that very rarely happens. So. This is usually something that there's a lot of communication going on with it, Tyler. It's not usually something that our customers have ever had, major issues with, except for the additional cost. And certainly we're not wanting to do the extra work, but we'll do whatever it takes to make the house perform like it's supposed to perform, based on the engineer's recommendations and our experience. So yeah, it's not really something that we typically, it's done on a change order and both parties agree, and we move on down the road.
Okay. Charlotte is asking how long we go between the pour and the framing. So how long?
Great question, Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte knows her concrete. It takes concrete of 28 days to cure completely. Now, does that mean we're going to wait a month to start framing your house? No, we are not. So we actually can start framing within a day or two of when we pour. The reason for that is that now that doesn't mean it's going to, by the way, it may sit a week, may sit 2 weeks, depending on when the framer's availability is, but we're not waiting for it to cure necessarily, because you're not really putting any substantial weight on the home until you start hanging all the sheetrock. So think of the frame of your home as like the skeleton, the bones in your body. So the bones in our body doesn't make up the bulk of our weight, regardless of what I was told as a kid that I was big bone. It turns out I was actually just overweight. So the bones of the home are the frame. They don't weigh very much. So you're not putting undue stress on that foundation. So you don't have to wait for it to cure for 28 days before you can start framing. On my home that I built in 2004 with Tilson, we were framing in 2 days. Of when the slab was placed, and the home is still standing just fine. Sat through Hurricane Ike just fine. So it's not something that you have to wait. I wouldn't go out and set a storm shelter or anything in the middle of it the next day. That would not be responsible. But we can certainly start framing on it. Do the framing, run the electrical roughs, HVAC while that's and it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to frame. About 2 weeks to frame the house anyway. 3 weeks on a larger home. So by that time, the concrete is good and cured, and you can start. By the time any significant weight is on the home, it's the concrete's cured. Great question though, Charlotte. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Warren is asking. I think we covered it, but just to make sure, can we do spray foam if a customer requests it?
We sure can. Yeah. So we do it standard in climate zone 3, no matter what. And then in climate zone 2, if you want to opt to do it, we have a price to do that. So we can do that anywhere in Texas, Warren. Thanks for asking.
And then Jennifer is asking if we know what climate zone Medina County is.
I should.
I'm trying to see if I can find it for her. So we can circle back if we need to.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that. I think it's I know Bernie, Kendall County is climate zone 3. But I think you being south of that, I think you're climate zone 2, but we can double check and find out for sure and let you know. And also the Bernie Design Center could tell you in a heartbeat, but you may have just stumped the exec, I think, for the first time on Facebook. I'm not giving up yet. We're going to find out what it is, and I'm going to answer it before this thing's over. So great question. And we will move on from that.
And then a different Jennifer is asking about zip system sheathing.
Yep. Yeah. So we've actually used it before. We've tried it. It's a good product. It's made by Advantech. We use their subfloor all the time, in fact. So what we don't prefer to use it because of the tape that's required for it, and all of it is very good. And if everything is perfectly clean and it worked on a job site, I'd be all for it. But there's what's designed to work on paper, and then there's reality. And on a job site, there's dirt and there's mud and there's sawdust and there's stuff that's on a job site. And the problem is that those joints aren't perfectly taped and then rolled with Advantech's roller, so that the joint is perfectly stuck, then you don't get their warranty and you don't get the performance that it's when done perfectly and properly on a clean site. It's a great product. We've had a much better experience, broadly speaking, with Tyvek and their tape and their product than we did with Advantech. But there's nothing wrong with the product. It's a good product. Great question though, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Jennifer Graham Antonio, Medina is in Climate Zone 2, so you would be getting the fiberglass insulation as a standard.
Climate Zone 2, there it is. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to come standard with fiberglass bats, and then we can do spray foam if you wish. What else?
And then Toby and Rita are asking how frequently the building superintendent is on site, and if we know how many houses they're managing at one time.
Yeah, Toby, there's no set rule, in fact, for either of those questions. Now, of course, we're going to cap them in a certain amount, but typically the building superintendent is on site as frequently as he needs to be. So, for instance, that means and I know that's kind of a vague answer, but the reality is during some of the phases, he needs to be there almost every day, 2 or 3 times a week or more. There's going to be other times where he needs to be there once a week to check on what's going on. So it's just going to really depend, but they're pretty good about making it to every site at least twice a week. And again, it just depends on what phase it's in. In some cases, they'll be out there almost every day in 1 week. In some cases, they'll maybe out there once or twice in a week. So it just depends on the phase and the level of detail that's going on and the level of oversight that's necessary at that particular time. Sometimes require more than others. And then how many houses they're managing is really going to depend on we have a lot of things that go into that. Part of it is the size of the home. Part of it is where all the homes are spread. So one guy may be carrying, 6 or 8 or 10 houses because he's spread further out geographically, where somebody else can be handling, 15 or 18 or 20 houses, but they're closer together. So that windshield time is a factor on the number of homes that they're carrying at one time. So it really depends on the time and on the area that they're building at the time. So great question though, Toby.
Sydney is asking if we can do tin metal with rock.
Yeah, we can do metal roofs. I think someone else had a question about that as well.
Yeah, Mark is asking that as well.
Of course, rock. Yeah, I keep calling it stone. I know in the hill country they call it rock. It means the same thing to us. Yeah, stone and rock. And yeah, we can do metal roofs.
All right, awesome. And then Toby and Rita are asking which climate zone Kerr County is. And I can tell you that is climate zone 3.
Oh, that's climate zone 3. Yeah, that's further west. The line is weird. It gets
all wonky in Central Texas.
It's a little yeah, you can tell it's a government program. It's a little strange.
Well, and we get the question a lot, like, why do these 2 counties that border each other, why is the price so different? That's usually why.
It's a great point, Dawn. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
All right. I think that is all of our questions at the moment.
Rock and roll. Well, we're going to get from Sheetrock. We're trying to get from Sheetrock on done here pretty quick so folks can move on. Again, keep asking your questions. We'll stay here as long as y'all can stand us. And then, but we're going to rock on for folks that have something else to get on to. So the Sheetrock goes next, of course, once the inspections are in and we've done everything we need to do and all that's cool. We're going to start hanging, taping, and floating and finishing Sheetrock. Then, of course, once the Sheetrock goes in, we'll do that. If we're doing blown insulation, that's when that will go in. Then we start working on your interior finishes. So your cabinets, your tile, your countertops, your plumbing fixtures, your glass, your mirrors, all that kind of pretty stuff. The details that you're actually going to see and live with. And then, of course, again, I don't see anything happen. A lot of things, what I talked about before, they have to happen in a serial manner. Some things can happen simultaneously, but most things on the build of a home must be done serially. You can't do the foundation until the lot's cleared. You can't do the frame until you have the foundation. You can't do the roof until you have the frame. You can't do inside work until you have a roof on the house. So there's some serial things that have to happen to do it correctly. Everything we can do simultaneously, we try to do that. We try not to have too many contractors in there on top of each other. Everybody likes to have their space to work, particularly right now. So we try to be very, very careful about that. But if you don't see anything happening, don't hesitate to reach out and ask us. We should be doing a good job of keeping you updated on what's happening or what's expected to happen. Sometimes it's weather, but typically we're all going to know if that's the case. If it's raining, you'll know. But just know that sometimes when it's sitting, we're either waiting on a particular trade that we like to use. So, for instance, I can probably go find a framer somewhere that'll frame your house. Never used them before. Don't know what kind of work they do. Maybe there's a reason they're looking for work. Or I can wait an extra week or so on the framer that I know, trust, have a relationship with, and know the product they put out. And I'd really rather wait that 5-7 days to get that out there. How does that sound? So that's typically what's going on when that's happening. Then we're going to move to the exterior finishes. And we do have a little illustration here of kind of the serial fashion in which things have to happen. Don, if you can blow this one up so I can show folks kind of, I know we asked about stone and we asked about metal. So this is a stone house getting a metal roof. But you'll notice, you see this kind of very white tint that's going around it. Well, that is, we painted the fascia of the home. So the little white part that you're seeing there on the very front of that's the fascia board. So we painted that with a spray rig, actually before the stone even went on. So the painter is going to come out after the house is framed and dried in. They're going to paint the fascia and stuff. Why is that? Well, metal roofs and even shingle roofs are very expensive. And you and I don't want that paint overspray all over our metal or shingle roofs, and we don't want it on the stone. So we got to get it framed so that we can get it painted. We got to get it painted so that we can get the stone and the roof on. We got it. So again, these are kind of the serial things that are happening. And you probably didn't see this stuff on the model home you went and toured, for instance, either in the home you're living in now or in one of ours. All you saw was a completely finished product. But the reality is this is actually the design center in Bernie, Texas. And, you may show up and say, ooh, why is this white paint everywhere? That looks very sloppy. Well, the reality is it's just overspray from painting the fascia. You're never going to see it. It's on the felt, and we're going to cover it with metal. So just know that it is a work in process. These houses don't, they're not built in a factory and then rolled out to your property. This is a custom home that's being built stick by stick and brick by brick, and you're getting to watch every phase of it. So it's just something to keep in mind that it's not finished until it's finished. And we're not going to ask any customer to accept an unfinished product. So this is a very kind way of me saying, don't panic. Everybody be cool, pick up the phone, call us if you're concerned. There are no bad questions. So give us a holler if you're concerned about anything, and we're going to be sure that you get your questions answered and that you're secure about what's going on. And then there, of course, still another set of inspections. So we got to make sure that the final inspections are all met. Of course, you're going to do a homeowner orientation where we walk you through all the different processes and systems of your home. So how to change the air filter up in the media filter that's on the air handler, how to program the thermostat, the appliances, all that kind of good stuff that goes into. We're going to talk about what the hose bibs are, how they work, what a hose bib vacuum breaker is, where the electrical system works, how arc fault breakers work. We're going to walk you through all of that. And then, answer any questions that you have. Closing is scheduled, which is super exciting. You close on the home, you get to move in to your beautiful new home out on your beautiful piece of property. We're not going anywhere. So just because we're finished with the home and you close doesn't mean that we disappear. We have our own warranty department that's staffed by Tilson employees with Tilson vehicles and Tilson tools to fix your Tilson home. And then, of course, we rely on small town America for referrals and references. We are a small family-owned business. Regardless of what you think our presence may be, we are, in fact, a family-owned and operated company. And we love it when people refer us to other people. It's the highest compliment of any business, but certainly of the home building business. So You get to enjoy your new home, which is the whole reason you're doing this, is that peace and serenity that you're after, that independent living that you're after. Construction typically lasts, actual construction is 6 to 9 months. The total process, like we said, 10 to 12, because a lot of that upfront design and investigative and discovery work is done. And then, of course, you're welcome to visit the house at any time. It's your land. We can't keep you out of there. Don't want to keep you out of there. Many cases we have where the customer is living on the property, either with family members nearby, or they've sold their existing home. They're living in a fifth wheel, which I don't recommend, but it's a thing. Mostly for your sanity, not for us. And then or living in a mobile home on the side. But we're used to building under the eye of the scrutiny of the customer. We really love it. We love the interaction. We love you getting to see it all come together. It's very, very exciting. So with that, do we have any other questions, Dawn, that I can help answer, or that you can help me answer, since you got the climate zone stuff down?
Yes, we do. So Sydney actually was clarifying her question. So she's actually asking if we can do metal on the exterior walls with the rock. So I guess in place of the siding.
Oh, okay. So that would be a metal building, and the answer to that is no. We are not set up to do a metal building. Ours are wood frame on slab. We can do stone wainscot, like what you're asking for, which is kind of the bottom 30 inches or so. But no, we don't have a way to do metal on the actual exterior. That would be like a true metal building, and we don't have that. We do have the lap and gap, board and bat, hardy siding that we'll do, kind of give it that farmhouse look. But we don't have an actual metal exterior other than the roof. Thanks for clarifying, Sydney. I appreciate that.
All right. And then Leroy is asking how efficient spray foam installation is.
Yeah. So, we believe it's very efficient because of the tightness it provides. So it seals up all of the different cracks and crevices where air can escape. In fact, so much so that on part of the price to go to spray foam insulation is totally changes the HVAC system. So you're going to get a dehumidifier because we have to have a way to get that moisture out of the home. The house can't breathe without some help. So, but that's what makes the spray foam home so much more efficient, is that it does seal the house up, so you're not losing that air that you're paying to cool it. Heat as well, but for the most part in Texas, we're worried about air that we're cooling, right? We do that 10 months out of the year. We only heat 2 or 3 months out of the year. So it's more efficient, but not because of the R value or anything like that. It's only more efficient because of the tightness of the home that it provides.
It's actually a lower R value, right?
It is a lower R value. Yes, exactly right. Yeah, the R value is actually lower. It's R13.
I'll hop in. Hi, guys.
Yep. Hey, Dawn.
Hi.
Good appearance. I love it.
Sydney has another question. She's asking about concrete stained flooring and also how customized can the home be? Oh man, so
stained concrete, we do it a lot. And then how customized can to your heart's desire. There's very, very few of our homes are sold as they are, as you see on our website, those floor plans. Our sales consultants are trained to redline them like crazy.
I really liked what Holly had to say about this, that it's whatever's in line with the laws of physics and your budget, we can do.
The laws of physics and your budget, that's exactly right. And the code, the building code.
Yeah, code. We'll figure that part out though.
And then can you bring your own floor plan? Yes, you can. So bring us your plan. Chances are you're going to have some modifications made to that anyway. So we'll probably start with one of our plans as just kind of a baseline price point and go from there and just redraw ours and probably take a blend of what you brought and what we have. And that's what we find happens most of the time. There are some times where we flat out build what the customer brings us. So,
absolutely. Pamela is asking if there's a best time of the year to start construction.
Right now.
Right away.
Pamela, that's a great question. A lot of people do ask that. In where we build in the counties we build in Texas, it's not that big a deal. Up north, like your Wyomings, your Idahos, that kind of in the Northwest and up in the Northeast, Maine, yes, it will vary. But where we are here in Texas, it doesn't really make it. It's going to rain when it's going to rain. It's going to be hot when it's going to be hot. You know the old saying here, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It was in the 50s last week, and now it's 96. So it doesn't. That's a great question, but from our experience, the houses can get built just as fast or slow, depending on what happens, regardless of the time of year. So great question. A lot of people have that on their minds.
So Mel and John have a very specific question. Do we build in Calhoun County at Redfish Retreat on Chocolate Bay? They're looking at waterfront property in that area. Are you familiar with that?
So definitely familiar with Calhoun County, Port Lavaca, Port O'Connor. I mean, we build a lot of houses all around there. Great fishing. That's why it's called Redfish Retreat. I mean, all your speckled trout and redfish and flounder. I mean, that's the Texas Grand Slam of fishing. The answer is, of course, we can build Calhoun County. If it's going to be required that it be up on pilings, I'm not as familiar with Redfish Retreat. If the waterfront requires it to be on pilings, if it has to be on pilings, that's not something that we do. Ours are going to be slab on grade. So if you're far enough off Chocolate Bay or off Chocolate Bayou where you can be slab on grade, we're good to go. But if it has to be on pilings, that's not something we're going to be able to accommodate. So. Okay.
They're actually going on to say, can they speak? Who do they speak with about finding out if we'd even build on that area?
I would definitely reach out to our Angleton Design Center. Yeah, I mean, the folks there in Angleton, Kim and Patricia, they build all over. I mean, they have the most. I know we mentioned windstorm. I kind of skipped by it because of the time, but that's a windstorm area. So any county that touches the Gulf of Mexico is going to be built to windstorm specifications. Our prices include that, obviously. But they're much more familiar with the different flood requirements and they can reach out to Redfish Retreat and Calhoun County and find out exactly what the requirements are, and can even pull up the restrictions, probably Redfish Retreat if you're concerned about some of the restrictions that people are held to out there.
And then they're also asking if we can take a look at the properties before they're purchased to kind of let them know to the site.
Yes. Yeah, we can do that. So we are, I'm grateful for this. We are very, very busy right now. We have a lot of customers. We have sold a lot of homes. We have a lot under construction, and that's wonderful. We're so grateful that we got a lot of people that want to be out on their land in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and that's cool. So it may take us a little longer because we're going to take care of our customers first. The people that we're under contract with, we're obligated to them, of course. But as time and bandwidth allows, yes, we will absolutely come out there and take a look at the property for you. And we can do that. And again, just making sure that if it's on pilings, we're not going to be able to help. But if it's not, we'll be glad to come out there and take a look at it, swing by.
We can also sometimes tell a lot from the survey. If they can bring that in, we may not need to actually physically go to the property.
Yeah, you can find out if the developer or the seller. That's a great point, Don. Thank you. You should come on more often.
Special surprise if you hung in this long.
But don't hesitate to reach out to the developer or to the seller, see if they have a survey that they can provide, and that will tell us a lot of information. But we can even pull up the flood maps on FEMA based on address and kind of see where we're going to be, but we can help you with all that. Absolutely.
Okay. And Charlotte was just posting a comment that her next question was going to be how we get the humidity out of a spray foam house. So
yes, yeah, great question.
Oh, and Crystal, we're so excited. She just signed her contract with the Waxahachie office. And it's just ready to get started. So that's awesome.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for letting us know. And then Pablo is asking if we can help buyers locate land to build on.
Man, it's tough right now. Land goes fast. One of the best resources we have found is actually Lands of Texas. So it's a website, landsoftexas.com. You can go there. You can search by county, by price point, by size of acreage. I mean, you can get very, very specific. And actually, you can even sign up for alerts as new properties come onto the market.
Yeah. That's a good one because they specialize just in property, so it's not going to get crowded like a Zillow where it may be giving you all this other irrelevant stuff.
Great point, Dawn. Yeah, we don't recommend using Zillow because they're going to try and serve you houses, and particularly since Zillow's got into the real estate business of selling homes, they very much would prefer you to buy a home than vacant land. But Lands of Texas is a great resource that a lot of our customers have successfully used. So,
absolutely. Toby and Rita are asking if there's discounts for paying cash.
Toby and Rita, yes, there are. So we give a 2% discount on the base price of the home for paying cash. So that's an immediate financial impact. The other kind of not quite as tangible financial impact is you won't have any closing costs with a lender. So if you're doing a mortgage on a home, you're going to close with a lender, and that lender is going to have their own set of closing costs. So your title, your escrows, your prepaids, all that kind of stuff that is typically around 3% of the loan amount. So on a $300,000 house, that's another $9,000 that you would not be having to come out of pocket with. And then truly just the logistics of taking another party out of the transaction. So there's some mental discounts, if you will, that go along with.
Don't have to worry about appraisals. Don't have any of that stuff going on.
That's exactly right. Yeah, closing is a lot easier. You're not bound to the title company's schedule or bound to the lender's schedule. Everybody trying to close on the last 3 days of the month, which boggles my mind, but it hasn't changed, and I'm not going to fight
procrastinators by nature.
Yeah, Americans are the best procrastinators on the planet. That's what it is.
And then Sydney is asking, how would we say the market is doing at this time?
Well, I touched on it maybe before she asked, but yeah, the market is very
busy.
Powerful right now. We are super busy. Our appointments, our salespeople are booked solid. Dawn oversees our online sales team, the consultants that you see pop up on our website. And yes, those pictures, by the way, are our actual employees.
Yes.
They're not models. They're our people because we love our people. So, and yeah, it's extremely busy. We have sold. I would never dream that we did what we did during this pandemic. But our customers are resilient. They have grit. They don't like being told what to do, turns out.
Yeah.
And they very much want to be on their little piece of Texas. They're 1 to 3 to 5 to 6 acres out in the middle of nowhere. And what better time to do that than now and be motivated to do that. So Sydney, it's good. And mortgage rates are, and I know it's cliche, but they truly are historically low. I mean, I can remember when I started selling houses for Tilson 18 years ago, if somebody got 8% interest rate, that was fantastic. And then when they got 6% in like 2005, 2006, it was, or before, it was amazing. And then when it went down to 4, it's like, this is unheard of. Well, now it's in the 3s. So there truly is no better time to buy. Supply is actually going to be getting difficult. Supply chains are being disrupted. That's a real thing. So that is when suppliers start saying, they start reading that on the news, that's code for price increases are coming. That's what they're telling us. Okay. When things are in short supply, that means they get in higher demand, which means they can demand a higher price. So, and some of that is very real. I don't mean to poke fun at any of our vendors or suppliers. It's a real thing. Supply chains are disrupted right now. So to say that this is the lowest the prices are probably going to be, and the lowest interest rates are probably going to be, is a pretty fair and safe statement. So
I can also say, if you were asking about the resale market, if you've got a home that you're worried about selling, it is also extremely strong.
Yes.
I read a report today that 45% of resale homes in the country actually had multiple offer situations in May. So that it's good. Like the real estate market is still in good shape. So I wouldn't be worried about.
Yeah, and Sydney, I think she's saying her home's in Bastrop County, which is outside of Austin. I mean, people are going to be wanting to get out of the city. So yeah, I would think, I'm not your real estate agent.
Yeah, definitely check with your local agent. But.
Yeah, check with your local agent, see what the time on market typically is for your price point. But in Bastrop area, I would anticipate it going pretty quickly.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Denise is just complimenting Sydney's new property.
Well, she's right. It's beautiful.
The skies are beautiful. Amy, who we've talked to a few times on these, is very excited. She had her stakeout this week and wanted to give kudos to Jerry Butler.
Well, he's just about got it down right. He's only been here about 43 years. So
we think we'll keep him.
Just about to turn professional. Yeah, no, he's a jewel in a gym, and I don't know what we do without him. So thank you for saying that, Amy. It's very sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And then let's see, Miranda just popped in. She's asking if preferred, could the home be built on slab instead of pier and beam?
We can certainly take a look at it. We've been investigating that lately. Of course, we used to do it years ago, 50 years ago. That was, even 90 years ago.
This question's out of order. We build most of our homes on slab, and so we're looking now at whether we can do pier and beam.
Oh, okay, maybe yeah. Most of ours are all going to be on slab, and we very few are going to be on pier and beam. But that's kind of come full circle, and we've got a few pockets where we may be trying that in the near future. So reach out to us, and we'll.
Awesome. Let's see, Stephanie, very exciting. They just picked out their colors, and they're moving right along under contract with San Marcos. Great team. So let us know what you picked.
Yeah, Stephanie, what are the colors?
Yeah, share pictures with us and stuff as you go through the process. We'd love to see what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah, thanks for trusting us. And for those of you, she won't say this, but everything that you see on our Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, it all comes from Dawn Dantzler and her team. So
I have help, yes. Kelsey and Nick are great, and they create a lot of that content too, but we're just really excited that everybody's enjoying it. And
Wizard of Tilson Oz behind the curtain, all the stuff that y'all see. And I'm not her fault, by the way. The talent is the talent.
We try.
You didn't get a choice.
Stop talking about yourself like that. You're doing amazing. Everybody loves you. Everybody say how much you love Eric.
Don't do it. We're going to move
on.
Do it. Oh, look, we're out of time. Thank you all for joining us very much. We appreciate it. Thanks for spending the time. Thank you for trusting us. Those of you who are our customers, thank you, Dawn, for setting this up.
Thank you, Eric, for doing this.
All of our channels. We got YouTube, we got Instagram, Facebook, TilsonHomes.com, all 11 of our design centers. We'd love to see you. And we hope to soon make you part of the Tilson family. You'll have a great rest of the day.